Fandom, to be a fan, which is short for fanatic, is to throw your support, to throw your emotional state behind a team or behind an organization. And in order to be a fan, you have to have and give unequivocal support to that team, to that organization. Fandom really, I think, dies with my generation, and maybe it carries into the millennial generation, but personal opinion, just from what I see, fandom, I think, dies with Generation X. And the generation that came in before ours, the boomer generation, has undying fandom, undying support for their organizations, for their teams. And that can be construed as either a positive or a negative. It can be both. It can hit both sides of the ledger. For me, I always wanted to be different. And so for 99% of my life, I've lived in the state of Wisconsin. And in the state of Wisconsin, number one, football is king, and number two, the Green Bay Packers are king. And basically, if you're born here, usually your parents are Packer fans. And usually that gets passed down to you. And me as a kid, look, my uncle, my aunt, my uncles and aunts, my cousins, my grandparents, my mom, my classmates, they're all Packer fans, all of them. And for me growing up, I had the option because of where I lived and because of the fact that I had, on the baseball side, access to WGN and became a Cubs fan very early on. I had access to the cable network out of Rockford, WIFR, where I was able to watch Bears games. And so we had the option in our house. You could watch the Packers or you could watch the Bears. And for me, it became more about doing the opposite of what everybody else did. So as a kid, especially when you're searching for an identity and you're searching to form who you are, it was appealing to me to be different. And in being different, I chose the Bears. No, I didn't choose the Bears because they were a Super Bowl champion. Originally I chose the Bears, number one, because they were an alternative to the Packers. I liked their colors. I liked the bear logo. I liked the fact that I could see them on TV here in very southern Wisconsin near the Illinois border and access to the Rockford cable stations. They appealed to me because of Mike Ditka. They appealed to me because of Walter Payton. They appealed to me because, yeah, I had seen the 85 team. Look, when the 85 Bears won their Super Bowl, I was 5 years old. I wasn't a cognizant fan, right? Maybe I could assimilate with a couple of names. I could assimilate the fact that it was a game of football, but I wasn't in a decision-making state as a fan. I didn't enter that decision-making state until I was about 7 or 8. And when I was 7 or 8, the Bears were still a decent team, but they weren't a Super Bowl champion. They were getting ousted from the playoffs because they were getting out-coached. And eventually, that core of that team went away, and they were deemed irrelevant. And the fact of the matter is that the Bears have been irrelevant for longer in my lifetime than they were relevant. And so I get a lot of flack from people that basically say that you're holding on to 85. I'm not holding on to anything. When in all reality, if you go by the numbers, this Chicago Bears team has been nothing short of a complete letdown, nothing short of a complete heartbreak my entire life. Kind of a laughing stock. And I think as fans, not only others, but yourselves. We assimilate ourselves and our personalities with our teams and the performances of our teams. So if my team is a loser, then I think in some people's eyes I'm a loser. If my team is a loser, maybe in my own eyes I'm a loser. Maybe my kids are losers because they support that team. And I think the other piece of feedback that I hear so frequently, because I've been surrounded by Packer fans, whether it be locally or within my family or on my timeline, because 80+% of my timeline is consumed by Packer fans, and obviously football is one of those sports that makes the fanatic in us come out and produces us to have reactions and feedback and banter, is that I commonly hear, well, the Packers had to endure the 70s and the 80s, and the Packer fans had to endure the 70s and the 80s. So it's only right that you have to endure the hardships of being a Bear fan. That's not really only right. The Packers are now on their second consecutive Hall of Fame quarterback. They've had 3 consecutive decades of winning. They've won 2 Super Bowls in that span. Generationally, 2 Super Bowls in a row, 2 generations in a row. They've been a dominant force in the division for most of my life. So for somebody to say that I am entitled to hardship, I take offense to that. I'm not entitled to hardship. This is an abusive relationship, the Bears and I. And the Bears and any fan that's a cognizant and aware fan. I consider this to be an abusive relationship. My decisions have no bearing on the performance of the team. Yet I am judged, and other Bear fans are judged by the performance of our team because we stay fans. Conversely, Packer fans, whose typical excuse in the way that they act is, well, I had to endure the 70s and the 80s. Well, it's not the 70s and the 80s, pal. Right? You dominated the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s, and now you're about to dominate the 2020s. It's not the 80s and the 90s. You can't hold on to the fact that there was a bit of a struggle because it hasn't been a struggle for 30 years. You've been dominant. A rivalry, a real rivalry, is when both teams have a shot. It's when both contenders have an opportunity to beat the other. This is not a rivalry. Packers and Bears is not a rivalry. The Packers and the fans of the Packers in particular are the playground bully that won't let the other kid up off the pavement. They take pleasure and pride in kicking their opponent while they're down. That's why I want to get out of this abusive relationship. This abusive relationship isn't just with the Bears and I. It is between Bear fans and Packer fans, and it is abusive. Go to Facebook, go to Instagram, find Charlie Barron's, the Keep Her Moving guy, actively saying F the Bears with the real expletive there. Actively saying that. Teaching that to children. Teaching that to a generation of people that are passing that along to their children. So in a society where we're trying to go across the aisle and we're trying to make things better between people, and we're trying to understand bullying, we're trying to understand hardship, we revert right back to that behavior. Because sports are supposed to be our refuge, right? A refuge from real life. And so in real life, if we can be kind and caring individuals, we can always go back to sports as a way to degrade people. Well, I've had enough of that. I think other fans have had enough of that. This identity shift for me isn't about me and the Bears. It's about the way Bear fans are treated. Not only do we have to put up with it from an organization that doesn't do anything to better themselves to win, but we have to put up with it from other fans. Oh, you're just complaining. You're a complainer is what we are labeled, right? No, we're not complainers. We're better than that. We deserve better than that. We deserve to treat people and be treated better than that. Be better. That's why I've decided to disavow with the Bears. It's not because I don't love the Bears. It's because I'm sick of the way that I'm treated. And I think other Bear fans are sick of the way that we're treated. Continue to treat us this way. You won't have a rival anymore. There's no rival for you. Good luck in life without a rival.